Let's go ahead and get started with today's webinar. Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for joining. It's great to see such a strong group from across the Mountain Towns 2030 movement. As I was mentioning to our presenters today, that we have about 111 or so people signed up for this webinar. So that was wonderful to see more and more people getting involved in the programming that we're developing partnership with so many members from our community. So thank you for joining us today. Today's conversation is an important one for mountain communities. Tourism is central to our economies, but also it's increasingly exposed to climate impacts. More and more, it's clear that communities and tourism partners need to work together, not just on messaging, but on real coordinated action. And that's what today's webinar is about. We're going to hear from a group in Colorado that's doing thoughtful work to bring together state, local, destination partners to advance climate resilience in tourism in our tourism-driven economies, grounded in research with the Travel Foundation, but focused on how this translates again into real-world action, because that's kind of the work that we like to do on Mountain Towns 2030, where we certainly all appreciate the theoretical side of things, but at the end of the day, we just like to get stuff done too. A quick comment on format. There's a QA function in the Zoom feature, which many of us, I think, are familiar with. Throughout the presentation, please feel free to drop in those questions as they come up. You don't have to wait till the end. And then at the end, we're going to have time to get through as many of those as we can. I'd like to introduce our speakers. First, we have Hilary Lewkowitz, who is the Director of Destination Development and Sustainability with the Colorado Tourism Office. We have Eliza Voss. Eliza is the Vice President of Marketing with the Aspen Chamber Resort Association. And Sarah Jane Johnson, who is from Durango, City of Durango, and the Tourism Destination Services Manager from the City of Durango. And all three are bringing, which is really nice because all three bring a slightly different perspective, the state perspective, destination, and local perspective, which should make for a really well-rounded conversation this morning. And with that, I will turn it over to Hilary and we'll get started. Hilary.
Great. Thanks, Richard. And we're happy to be here and talk tourism today. And thanks for having us. Just a quick run through of the agenda. I'll talk a little bit about the Colorado Tourism Office and the work that we do from a state level, as well as just taking a step back and looking at the role of tourism and climate action. And then I'll hand it over to Eliza with Aspen Chamber Resort Association, then Sarah Jane Johnson with Visit Durango, and then we'll make sure to save plenty of time for questions. And as Richard mentioned, feel free to add any questions into the chat as we go along, and then we'll go ahead and answer those all at the end. All right, so the Colorado Tourism Office is a division of the Office of Economic Development and International Trade. We do sit within the governor's office and work closely alongside other divisions like the Office of Outdoor Recreation and Colorado Creative Industries and many more. So we are just one piece of the economic puzzle within the state of Colorado, but also knowing that the tourism industry is a huge economic driver throughout our state. Our vision is to empower the tourism industry by inspiring the world to explore Colorado responsibly and respectfully. And we do this through a number of avenues, including industry research and education, leadership, as well as stewardship, management, and marketing. In 2024, we went through a year-long process to develop a statewide destination stewardship strategic plan. And the vision of that plan is to support a balance between quality of life for residents and quality of experiences for visitors while enhancing our environment and our community. And we were one of the first states across the US to develop a plan like this and really push our industry to not only look at the economic drivers and impacts of tourism, but think about how tourism impacts communities in a holistic level and looking not only at environmental impact, but quality of life and other components that make up what it means to love the community that you live in, ensure that that is protected for years to come. We do have a section within that plan around climate action and several strategies related to that, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about the work that we're doing around climate action. But I just wanted to ground it in the fact that a lot of the work that we're doing is coming out of the stewardship plan and is helping give us at a state level, a vision to work towards, as well as our industry partners to work towards that as well. So I want to take a step back and just talk about the role that tourism plays in climate action. As many of us in our mountain communities know, visitors are drawn to scenic beauty, outdoor pursuits, and mountain charm. All of these components that make up the visitor experience. And a lot of times, tourism is the main driver in our mountain towns. It can be upwards of 80 to 90% of the economy is dependent on tourism. Tourism generates tax revenue, jobs, infrastructure. It has huge implications as to how communities can be successful and community vitality. But tourism economy just doesn't happen. It actually takes a lot of coordination and collaboration with tourism leadership to ensure that it is an economy that is growing in a sustainable way, that is still benefiting our community members and protecting the environment. And without that leadership, it's really hard to be successful. So, tourism is both impacted by and contributes to climate change. And I'll start with its contributions. There was a huge study that was done a few years back that looked at a decade of impacts of the tourism economy on greenhouse gas emissions and looked at several destinations across the world. And what the study found was that sort of like general typical breakdown of greenhouse gas emissions is that 72% of that could be contributed to transportation to and within the destination. And of that 72%, over 50% is actually aviation and transportation to the destination. So we know that's sort of our elephant in the room. And Richard shared with us that the Jackson Hole Airport was going to do a webinar coming up soon to talk about their solutions around the aviation industry. So really excited to hear about that. But we do know at the state level, as well as within our destinations, this is a big one that's hard for us to really have control and leadership on. However, there still is another 20% of transportation to and within the destination that we really could have some positive impact on. 12% is food, and that is both transportation of food for consumption to the destination as well as food waste. And this is a fantastic opportunity for the tourism industry to influence local foods and bring that into the visitor experience and the community experience, as well as have programs that help to divert food waste. 8% is accommodations, both looking at electricity and sort of energy consumption as well as water consumption. And then 6% is events and activities. And so most of these sort of emissions contributions, we can actually play a really positive role in impacting and curbing emissions and looking at reducing across the supply. So anything that we're bringing into the destination and demand. So looking at how we can influence visitor behavior. As far as the impacts of climate change, this winter has given us a really good example of how challenging it is. Looking at sort of state level, how we've been impacted by a really terrible snow season and having a short duration in the winter, as well as a lack of accumulation of snow. We've seen some really interesting results play out. We work with a company called Datify that provides anonymous cell phone and credit card data for us to kind of understand how visitors are moving across the destination. What we saw was a pretty massive decline in overnight stays at our mountain communities. So we've seen this huge increase in one night duration stays, which is really terrible for travelers' impact on climate and emissions because it just means more turnover unless people are staying for a longer duration. And we're also seeing a huge decline, about 10% on average, in visitor spending. And then we also saw that people were just moving differently across the state. And so overall, as a state, through this winter, we're looking at flat slash slightly up in visitation and spending. And that's because people were just deciding to not come to the mountain communities and instead go to other places across the state. And I know Sarah Jane and Eliza will elaborate a little bit that on as well. We're also very concerned about what summer looks like and how sort of the perceptions of drought and low snow means for visitors coming to our communities, as well as altered river flows, water demand, what that means, and of course, loss of wildlife, biodiversity, and many other challenges. So, really, it gives us this opportunity to build resiliency through adaptation and planning and think about how we can shift our tourism planning, our tourism economy to plan for more winters that might be like this or other challenges that come from climate change. So, sort of the opportunity, if for those of you who might sit in a municipality and haven't worked with the tourism industry or might be familiar with tourism leaders in your community but haven't engaged yet, is that what we're seeing from our lens is that a lot of times our industry and our leadership hasn't been a part of local or regional climate action planning. And so there's this great opportunity to bring tourism into the conversation, especially when it is such a predominant part of the economic impact in communities. As tourism leaders, we can't solve all the problems, and that's pretty clear, but we are naturally organizers, collaborators, marketers, creators, and we are that connection to visitors coming into your community and a connection to the tourism industry. So I want to talk about a few examples that kind of play off of that, and then I'll hand it over to Sarah Jane and Eliza to give some more specific examples in their destination. So, a lot of how we've kind of framed our initial work within climate action is this sort of first mile concept, knowing that a lot of times I think we're all kind of dealing with limited budget and capacity, and we know that we can't do everything, but we can start somewhere. And so, kind of that first mile, first step is applying the climate lens to the work that we're already doing. So, how can we sort of shift the work that we're doing and the sort of quote unquote business influence or business as usual to kind of move into kind of strategies and tactics to influence visitor behavior or help with the sort of the supply chain demands to shift the emissions. So that comes, mostly within marketing and product development. I'll give a couple of examples of that. And the first one is with marketing. And so there's some different tactics that we've applied, and there's other folks outside of the US that are doing incredible work in this realm. The first one is targeting markets that will stay longer, spend more, potentially travel in the off season, and have less distance to travel. So it's like an emissions conscious targeted marketing. So looking at those markets that really do give us sort of the highest economic impact with the lowest emissions impact. The other is that travelers, well, a lot of studies have found is that they may care about sustainability, they care about the environment, but when it comes to behaviors when they're traveling, they tend to be more focused on the what's in it for me, whether that's finding enjoyment in the activities that they do, saving a couple dollars, or just having fun and making sure that everything that they're doing is convenient. And that is just typical traveler behavior. So what we try and do is really frame any experiences that are or are more of that low carbon option as either the easy or the default experience. So it's not something that we're trying to highlight the amount of carbon that's being saved or try and have somebody do something that's more complex than they want to do, but really it's just easy. It's the one option that they have. The other, as I mentioned, is this what's in it for me aspect. So not focusing in on the emotional appeal of saving the environment, but really, again, that convenience factor. And I have one example on the screen where we're pushing for local foods, but we're not talking about all the amazing environmental benefits of supporting local food system. It's just that it tastes better. And it looks really fun to sit out on this picnic table with an amazing view and a bottle of wine. Some other options are just uplifting those businesses that are doing an incredible job, whether they've achieved certification or they are doing some really fantastic low impact work. Similarly, with alternative transportation and local food, again, just uplifting those businesses and those opportunities in a way that feels natural and convenient for the visitor. Some other examples, this is more in the product development range, is we have a partnership at the state with the Colorado Energy Office and Colorado Department of Transportation to electrify all of our scenic byways, meaning that there's charging infrastructure every 100 miles. Right now, we have 20 out of the 26 byways that have been designated as electric. This is a fantastic opportunity to promote our rural communities, especially on the Eastern Plains that might not have as many opportunities through tourism. It's a great way to encourage travelers to get out of their car when they're charging and spend money at local businesses. And of course, it reduces carbon emissions. We've had fantastic pickup through earned media, articles in Afar, and other great national media outlets that are highlighting these new EV byway road trips. Another program that we have, and this is in the range of product development, is dark sky certification. So we provide technical assistance for our state park and community partners to achieve International Dark Sky Place certification, whether that's as a community or a park. We're currently at 21 certifications, and Colorado has the most certifications in the pipeline of anywhere in the world, which is a really fun statistic to share. And I think what's really great is that this is an experience that is happens to be trending and has been for a few years for folks that are really interested in having that experience of looking up at the stars and that sense of awe and wonder. But on the side, it also gives us a way to reduce light pollution and emissions, protect wildlife, educate visitors on the importance of dark skies, and of course, get people excited about nature. So again, it's sort of like we're looking at these opportunities that are people are excited about, but there's these secondary benefits that mean that we are reducing emissions and doing a service for the environment. Outside of marketing and product development, we have some programs and grant opportunities that we provide to partners. The first is the Climate Champions Program, and this provides education, technical assistance hours, and peer learning and networking to our destination marketing and management organizations. And so, some great outcomes for this program is the development of climate action strategies. It could be things like development of a zero waste plan, and we've had some other great outcomes as well. And then we also have a partnership with the Colorado Green Business Network that helps to certify businesses and ultimately reduce their emissions and environmental impact. And this is a partnership with the Department of Public Health and Environment. And this kind of is a great nod to the fact that as a tourism industry leader, we can't do everything, and these partnerships really are key for us to have a positive impact. And then we also have a grants program that provides financial support up to $25,000 to do things like creating a climate action plan or a zero waste events plan. So that's just a high level overview of what we're doing at the Colorado Tourism Office, and I'll hand it over to Eliza.
Thanks, Hilary. You can go to the next slide. So the Aspen Chamber Resort Association is a hybrid chamber of commerce and destination management organization. So we are partially funded by traditional Chamber of Commerce memberships, and then separate budget for the destination marketing side, which is funded by a lodging tax. And that is the budget that I manage, and the part of the organization that I manage as well. So when we talk about our climate action timeline, actually, stewardship and sustainability are really part of the DNA of Aspen as a destination. You can see here going back to 1885, it was the first municipality west of the Mississippi to use hydroelectric. By 2020, 100% of city-owned facilities were powered by renewable energy. Aspen Skiing Company, which is privately held, began their sustainability initiatives in the late 90s. And then we launched our destination management plan in 2022. If you go to the next slide, I'll talk about some of the realities of our structure, and then I'll also talk about what that destination management plan, how that interacts with climate action. So as a DMO that sits outside of city government, we really don't have the ability to influence or implement policy. So a lot of the work in our destination management plan is either framed under things that we can lead on, partner on, or advocate from. So as it relates to climate action, we really can become a facilitator to distribute the information. We shifted our marketing messages to show what our community values are, so they align when we're trying to attract visitation from like-minded individuals who will care for the place and understand kind of the ethos surrounding our location. And the next slide, please. And the destination management plan indicated a few things as it relates to climate action. One was to get GSTC or Mountain Ideal certified, which we did achieve in 2024. As part of that Mountain Ideal certification, one of the things we needed to do was launch the Colorado Green Business Network of Aspen, which Hilary just sort of referenced. And that has been a great way to engage our business community and uplift businesses that are certified through that program, and it has been growing. The plan also indicates to accelerate the reduction of the carbon footprint of tourism. One way we're doing that is the city of Aspen developed Aspen Sustainable Action Plan as a roadmap of the goals and objectives that the city can target. So reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 63.4% by 2030 and 100% by 2050. So we'll work to support them, but again, they're the sort of governing body. It also indicates to preserve and regenerate the natural environment. Some ways we're doing that is we have an Aspen Pledge, and anybody that signs the Aspen Pledge, our organization will donate $18.80, which is the year Aspen was founded, towards 2 local nonprofits that protect our public lands and preserve and regenerate those public lands. So that's one way we're trying to give back to an asset that is enjoyed by both visitors and locals. We're very involved in the Maroon Bells reservation system and their comprehensive recreation management plan, which is part of that preserve and regenerate. So that preserves the asset of the Maroon Bells, but it also preserves the visitor experience by making sure the visitor use is managed. And then we also sponsor events in town that align with respectful and responsible tourism. One of them is through the Aspen Center for Environmental Studies. They do a winter talk series called Potbelly Perspectives, and it's sharing stories within our community of from community members that have traveled outside and had an amazing experience. So, you know, highlighting tourism's ability to provide transformative experiences and also creating community within our own town. The catalyze sustainable choices. So we are featuring public transportation and other forms of low impact transportation as the primary way to get around once you're here. We do offset through the Good Traveler when our staff travels or when we welcome group travel. And then encouraging voluntourism, and actually a project that Sarah Jane was involved in when she was here in the Valley is that we did partner across the Valley to promote Roaring Fork outdoor volunteers voluntourism opportunities in the summer of 2024. You can go to the next slide. A huge part of our organization's way that we can impact climate action is through the public-private partnership. So the city of Aspen is really the lead on some of the most meaningful programs in our community. They have a program called Building IQ, which is trying to electrify buildings within the community for retrofit projects. The waste diversion ordinance resulted in a 70% increase in the amount of food waste kept out of the trash and made into compost. And then they too have an electric vehicle charging strategy, which was implemented in 2024. So lots of kind of cross promotion of those to our businesses through that, traditional chamber work aspect of our organization. And then, of course, the Green Business Network, which we did launch in partnership with them. So the city provides the technical assistance and we sort of market the sustainable efforts that these businesses are making. Next slide. I want to touch on something that both Richard and Hilary mentioned, and I think there was a question in the chat about resiliency and how mountain towns really are reliant on snow, and how to sort of diversify the economic reliance on that. And we, of course, really saw that this winter with the low snow winter. So all of our communities have these sunk costs in terms of hotels that need to be filled. And so we really saw the importance of special events that will fill those hotel rooms anyway, despite what the snow conditions may be. And some examples of that are, we have Aspen Gay Ski Week, which comes in January. And of course, they are coming to ski, but there is more to it. So we did see gains in that week, despite snowfall. And then more recently, we've had a new literary festival launch in September. So sort of a shoulder season timeframe, but taking advantage of some of those tourism assets and infrastructure that are in place. And I think our communities will continue to see the importance of being able to use those assets and for other offerings like arts and culture. And then we did see, Hilary also alluded to this, Glenwood Springs, which is at the base of the Roaring Fork Valley, really did see an uptick in visitation, even, from some of our own community members who would have maybe usually been skiing, but instead we're going to the hot springs. So there is interesting ways that people are moving through our communities. And the next slide. This work is very slow, but it's meaningful. It's not like you can just say, check, check, it's done. This shoulder season piece was something we learned during our destination management plan process. Our residents really wanted to limit the promotion of shoulder season, and we have protected that wish. People, of course, can still come here and we'll welcome them, but we're not doing active capture marketing campaigns to promote shoulder season. And that's really sort of a dance that we'll look at throughout the years to come as climate really plays a role in impacting visitation. And as Hilary mentioned, the aviation emissions are a huge piece of what travelers, how travelers are impacting our communities. And particularly in Aspen, we have a very high number of private jets coming in, which really whacks out those climate greenhouse gas emissions. And I would say one thing that we learned, our destination management plan was put together by Destination Think, which is a global company. And it was very fascinating because the plan recommended putting into effect some sort of additional tax on private jets that you could put into regeneration or sustainability initiatives. We thought that was a great idea, and then quickly found out that the FAA requires that you treat everybody equally. So that was a lesson learned. And obviously in different areas of the world, you can tax differently. But so we will continue to look at how we can sort of work with governing bodies to see about impacts from aviation. And then, as Hilary mentioned, their Climate Champions program. As the DMO, we did not have the ability to sort of implement the climate action plan. The city takes the lead on that, but we were able to work with our neighboring destination is Snowmass Tourism, and we did work together to promote a transportation pilot program this past fall, where our regional transportation partner, the Roaring Fork Transportation Authority, offered free fares for 2 months during off season to encourage new trial on public transit. So there are ways to work within your confines is basically what I want to share. And over to you, SJ.
Good morning. Hi. Great to be here. I would just like to point out, for those of you who don't know where Durango is, we're in the southwest corner of Colorado, and we are definitely not a ski town, but we have a ski resort. So that is an interesting factor of consideration for us as a tourist destination. I would say, and I'll get to this a few slides down, we haven't really been impacted in the same way as some of our other mountain resort community peers with a drop in visitation this winter. However, we are starting to really home in on the data so that we are looking at how visitation and hotel occupancy data is tracking with weather. So that's something important to know. So a little kind of overview of our organization. Visit Durango, over the course of the last year, we have merged into the city. So we are now part of the local municipality. What attracted me to join this organization at this time, because I'm somewhat new, it really seemed to me to be a governance opportunity, frankly, because tourism now has the right seat at the table. We are sat at the table where policy decisions are being made, and we can influence policy, which is fantastic. We are sat with transportation, with the city's sustainability department, along with events and economic opportunity. So we are with the people. Our colleagues are now the people that we are looking to work with around all of our efforts with our climate action plan. Something else interesting to note about Visit Durango is that we have the right organizational resources compared to some of our other tourism office peers. We were mandated by voters to do the work of sustainable tourism and sustainable tourism marketing in 2022. So the community has approved for increased funding from lodgers tax collections in order for us to do the work of sustainable tourism. That has enabled us to restructure. So we have destination management and budget to do the work of sustainable tourism. So that is how our team is structured. That is kind of, we stand alone somewhat as a tourism office with capacity and funding. Next slide, please, Hilary. So a little bit about who we work with. As I mentioned, being part of the city now, which is new, this is a huge opportunity for us, but we have been doing this work since 2023. And some of our key tourism partner resources include, as I mentioned, city departments, but also sustainability partners within the community. And we really rely on the relationship and the expertise of an organization called Four Corners Office of Resource Efficiency. They are doing a lot of work. They are contracted by the city. They are also going to be contracted by our tourism office to do a lot of this work as we move forward. So that's very exciting. We previously worked with those two other partners to create the Green Business Certified program within Durango. This is actually going to be relaunched later this year. And there's a lot of climate resiliency indicators attached to being a member of that Green Business program if you are running a business in this community and destination. We have also worked with these two entities to start building out a sustainable tourism impacts dashboard where we are really making sure that we are measuring and monitoring those key metrics around climate impacts, whether it is everything from weather, temperature, water, waste management, you name it. Next slide, please. Yeah, as I mentioned, one of the key metrics that we have been looking at, and we're starting to share this data with our local ski resort, Purgatory Ski Resort. They have even deeper data than this, but this is just a high level to show you what we're looking at on a monthly basis to really see how hotel occupancy is trending, whether it is rainfall, snowfall, or temperatures, obviously during summer season, where it's really quite pleasant down here in Southwest Colorado. Next slide, please. Yeah, slow snow. So you can see here, actually, this is showing occupancy for the last 3 winter seasons. If you look, we're not really seeing very much difference in terms of occupancy and visitation, given that I think the last 2 winters there has been significant drop in snowfall down here in Southwest Colorado. It hasn't necessarily impacted us. We would consider this a kind of low season, slow season, even though we do have a ski resort. And we're looking to do a deeper dive and really understand our snow economy, for want of a better word. And how do we market around that as well? We have shifted some of our marketing efforts in line with this. Next slide, please. So we are also, we're in another unique position, being one of few DMOs in the state that does have a climate action plan. This is work that we did back in 2023, 2024. The climate action work that we did, again, was shaped by community input and voices, a continued conversation to really drive us to do this work and understand what our role and responsibilities were as the tourism office, leading our local tourism industry. So again, this is really important to note. This was shaped by and really driven by a desire from community. And one of those big concerns, of course, was water. Water is a huge issue for us in Southwest Colorado. And why is this all important? Well, because, we have a reliance on a visitor economy and also an outdoor rec economy. A third of our economy is tourism and outdoor recreation based. And outdoor recreation represents 70% of our tourism economy here in the beautiful San Juan Mountains. Within that plan, we were also really able to start identifying how are we aligning with the city. The city has a sustainability plan and some pretty lofty goals, which I think are on the next slide. But I just wanted to highlight some of the objectives that are stated in our climate action plan. We have fairly robust goals, and those include reducing food waste within the destination by 30% by the end of 2026. We are also looking to achieve dark sky certification and 40% compliance by actually the end of 2025, but we're probably pushing that out to the end of this year. We are also, within our plan, we have identified that we need to work towards decarbonization of transportation within our county by 17% by the end of 2028, and decarbonizing transportation 25% of the 2005 levels with net zero by 2050. So those are the lofty goals that we are trying to work towards within our climate action plan. Next slide, please, Hilary. And as I just mentioned, this is really about looking at how we align with the work that the city is doing. And so we are in the right place to partner and work with our colleagues. As you can see here, we're looking at, as a city, reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 54% by the year 2030. We're looking to be net zero by 2050. And as a tourism office, we have signed and we are committed to the Glasgow Declaration on Climate Action in Tourism, in the tourism industry. Next slide, please. So yes, going back to our climate action plan and the work that we identified with those lofty goals. So how are we going to reduce food waste within our community? This is really interesting work, and I would bet that we are probably one of the only tourism offices, certainly in the US, to do this work. We currently have a food waste reduction pilot program. We started doing this work about a year ago. We're extending it into 2026, and we're actually increasing it. Really, what the work looks like for us at the moment is collecting the data. We are trying to collect good data so that later in 2026, we can, as a tourism office, really start designing programming that supports our industry. We focused on the restaurant industry, but we're also working in partnership with one of the local hotels. What might that work look like? We will identify that. I'm guessing it's probably going to be around education and messaging. And that will be really important work that we can do within our destination to really provide educational resources for restaurant owners and those businesses around how they can reduce their food waste. It's been a very inclusive program over the last year. We have a kind of steering committee which is made up of local restaurateurs and hotels that have really been participating and to try and understand what does this work look like and when can they intersect with it. But it's been very collaborative. Next slide. Another area of our work which is really critical is marketing and communications. What does that look like? Wow. Well, that actually starts right in-house in the tourism office. And we are looking at really increasing climate education and climate action education for our staff and our key stakeholders. That starts, we're kind of overseen by, we don't have a board anymore, we have a tourism advisory commission, but we will be doing critical education of our commissioners along with our staff over the next few months so that we really have educated staff within our public relations, marketing, sales, welcome center departments. So our tourism staff are really understanding the value of the work and what it looks like and why it is so impactful. It really is about bringing everyone along and really working with the primary stakeholders, i.e., the staff that are doing this work. We are looking at how do we start doing a better job of marketing and promoting this work to stakeholders, to residents within our destination, and then to visitors as well. How do you communicate about this work to the critical stakeholders, i.e. the visitors that are coming here? How do we align to get the right visitors that really care about coming to a destination that is doing this kind of work? So that's a huge lift for us as a tourism office. Next slide. And then beyond all of this, that is all underway, the next mile for us is really starting to focus on water. Am I right, Hilary? We are under stage 1 drought restrictions already. There is conversation within this region about moving to stage 2 fairly soon. What does that look like? We've really got to start thinking about that. There's a lot of communication efforts kind of happening behind the scenes and very much in collaboration with other community partners. But we are starting to identify what kind of work we can do as the tourism office. Does it look like water-wise training? Are we creating water conservation guidelines for our businesses so they can really understand what their role is and very simple actions that they can participate in around water conservation and climate resilience? I'm losing my voice. I think that's, yeah, next slide. That's it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sarah Jane and Eliza, and thanks to everybody who stuck along on this journey. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go to the Q&A and see what we have for questions. And then Richard, if you want to help facilitate as well. Looks like there's one question that is open. Is it sustainable in the era of climate change to have mountain towns so dependent on a single industry, which is impacted by snowpack, fires, and drought? Is there a role for economic diversification? And if so, how can that work together in tourism? Know if anybody wants to start off with that one.
I touched on it a little bit with the arts and culture. And we, as a destination, have a long history of arts and culture offerings. So some of that is baked in, but it is also looking at those special events that may come to your destination. And what's interesting, I think, is that oftentimes special events are what residents push back on the most because it has a bigger impact. But I do think even in it, like this year, people were aware of how important sort of laying that bed base was through the special events. So it's always shifting.
That's a kind of interesting question, and I certainly from a tourism standpoint, as I mentioned, I think our tourism economy is somewhat diversified, i.e., we're not totally dependent on snow. However, we know full well and have experienced this as a destination previously. We have been hugely impacted by wildfire in the past, and it has literally shut down. For those of you that know Durango, we have the Durango Silverton narrow gauge railroad, which is a huge economic, pun intended, engine. And during the 2018 wildfire, the train was stopped because it ran through a kind of zone area where the wildfire was active. That had a huge economic impact. So I don't know that I'm necessarily answering the question, but it is something that I think about a lot, and I think this is a good conversation for our community. And again, we're at the right seat in the table to be having those conversations around economic diversification, for example, especially I think a lot about outdoor recreation industries and manufacturing and things like that.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and encourage anybody else to throw some questions at us while we have a few minutes remaining. I'm going to give it a couple seconds and see if anybody wants to throw anything out there.
There was a question that came through about the pledge that I sent the link about the pledge, but I will say we committed $50,000 from the launch of the pledge, and the relaunch was in 2022, and we still haven't expended that 50K. So we have run campaigns against it. The nonprofits include it in their emails. So it's very interesting in this sort of a post-COVID world, how resistant people are to reading and sort of taking action on something that's pretty passive for them.
And there's a couple questions that came through the chat. The first one, there are a lot of carbon zero goals mentioned in the presentation today. From what I understand, greenhouse gas emission reporting protocols, scope 1 through 3, do not include carbon from tourists traveling to their destination. Are the presenters today including greenhouse gas emissions from people traveling to your destinations when talking about getting to zero emissions?
I would have to check with our city who put in the goals to understand who they're including.
And I would kind of add to that, certainly from the city of Durango in terms of data and metrics. We are looking to align with the city, so I need to kind of really understand what kind of data they are collecting. But it is a metric that we want to be tracking as the tourism office moving forward.
And then, Sarah Jane, I think this question is great for you. How do you feel like the food waste pilot program is going from the perspective of being run by a tourism chamber? Do you feel like businesses are receptive to that program?
I would say, how's it going? It is about data collection at this stage. And after I would say, I think it was about 8 or 9 months of data collection last year, working with our vendor on that data collection, we really looked at how to make it more efficient and really facilitating a kind of different way of collecting that data. So I think it is we have a path forward, which is why we're kind of doing another sort of 6 to 9 months of data collection. In terms of partners, I think we have had to do a lot of stakeholder engagement, which really for any program that you are running through a tourism office, that is the work that we have to do to get partners on board and involved. Um, I think this is a really kind of interesting and exciting lane for us to be in as the local tourism office, really bringing our partners with us because who else is going to help them do this work, frankly? So we have a leadership opportunity. It's pretty interesting and exciting.
And then more of a marketing question. As you think about getting the word out there to the right travelers for tourism, how are you all prioritizing which traveler personas to target? For example, the luxury traveler versus the budget backpacker while maintaining the city's core brand.
This has been really tricky for us as a luxury destination, because the reality of the average daily rate the hotels are charging does mean that you have to have a certain economic household income to be able to come and stay here. So it's very tricky for us. We aren't really able to market outside of those destinations that have direct fly to Aspen, sort of because of those same reasons, but trying to portray the community's values is really where we're trying to find our lane, within that constriction of, there is a reality of you have to be able to afford to come here.
Oh, yeah, I think it is, gosh, a lot of consumer research that this is work that we're looking to do over the next few months as we really kind of realign and reset how we are doing sustainable tourism marketing. I mean, off the top of my head, I think it is very segmented messaging for each of those different audiences and types of travelers in terms of what they are going to respond to or participate in when they are in the destination.
And then there was one comment in the Q&A section. I would like to just comment that food waste isn't always about the downstream waste. There are ways to prevent waste in restaurants upstream. I would love to see someone champion this idea. And then there's a article link I can try and put in the chat. Pop it in. Oh, I think that's all we have, Richard.
Well, that was a wonderful webinar. And I mentioned to the panelists before we got started that one of the things I personally have enjoyed about being a part of Mountain Towns 2030, certainly on the organizing side, bringing together subject matter experts and practitioners who are doing the work with people who want to learn from them is wonderful. But I have to say, just being a participant and a consumer of this information, the education, yeah, I mean, it's wonderful to continue to learn. So first of all, I want a big thank you to Hilary, Eliza, Sarah Jane for sharing your work and your perspective. As I mentioned at the drop, this is exactly the kind of practical collaborative thinking that we need to see happen more across mountain communities. And on our end with Mountain Towns 2030, we're going to continue to try to create these opportunities for these collision of ideas and people to get together so we can learn from each other and frankly get some really cool shit done. Um, And also want to thank all the panelists or attendees for joining and asking questions and engaging. Before I sign off real quickly, a couple things. I would be remiss if I did not mention that registration is open for the annual summit. This year it's in Sun Valley on October 13 and 14. And we're really looking forward to how this summit is shaping up. It's happening alongside Sun Valley's 90th birthday as the original ski town in North America, which is really wonderful to be able to come together and celebrate our mountain towns and really think about what it means to try to make sure that they're going to be great for the next 90 years, because that's what we're all fighting towards. Um, I've also wanted to let you know that just like this, we want all the people in the community to participate to in our content. And so I put in the chat a link for call for presentations for the deep dive sessions, which are the afternoon sessions that we have on the Tuesdays and Wednesdays. We'd love to get the ideas from the communities and all our stakeholders about what you would love to talk about at the summit. And sometimes we can fit those things in, but even if we can't, we can find other ways to bring them to life in webinars and other engagements that we have. So please feel free to click on that. But also please feel free to register for the summit, book your lodging. Last thing on that, also, there's a lot of this movement continues to grow. I mean, these webinars started, we had like maybe 20, 30, and today we had 111 sign up and about 60 or so at peak. So that more and more people are kind of getting involved in this. So I would encourage you, as you kind of reach out to other people in your mountain communities and even your adjacent rural communities, to let them know about us and kind of get in the boat and paddle with us. The more the merrier on this work. And lastly, we mentioned this during this particular session. We have another webinar on May 13th. It's related to tourism and climate. It's about reducing airport emissions and some of the amazing work that's being done and delivered in Jackson, which is great because again, it's not theoretical work. It's practical work that's actually already happening and it can get replicated. And that's what Mountain Towns 2030, the engine's all about, is trying to get things done faster, quicker, cheaper, because of what we can learn from the people that the organizations and communities that went before us. So we're looking forward to that as well. With that, I would again like to thank our panelists and thank you all for attending, and look forward to seeing you all again soon somewhere in a Mountain Towns 2030 gig somewhere. Cheers.
Thanks, Richard. Bye.